Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for the podcast series brought to you by Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank. And we appreciate your active engagement in the first and second episodes of the podcast series brought to you by Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank. And you can listen those two episodes from two podcast platforms, Anchor.fm and Apple Podcasts as well. And YouTube and Facebook platforms also could be used to listen those two episodes. And you can find the links in the description, in the YouTube description for those videos as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank basically targets two sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goal number 2, zero hunger, and SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. So thus the programs, projects, and the processes of Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank are aimed towards achieving these two important sustainable development goals. So the major objective of this podcast series is to create a resourceful, knowledgeable background to the stakeholders in the macro environment of Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank, explaining the way to reach sustainable development goals by our programs, projects, and processes. In this way, we were searching for a resource person for the today's topic, food banking services. It is related to food banking services. Ladies and gentlemen, so the topic of today's podcast session is going to be food banking services and its importance towards zero hunger. So to discuss some important matters regarding this theme, this topic, we were searching for a resource person who is very resourceful in this regard and who is very important in this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, as the moderator, I believe it's my responsibility to give herself a little introduction. She is the co-founder of the Food Bank Singapore, a non-profit organization that redistributes food to needy, and she runs her family business, food distribution company, Food Services, and its 3 subsidiaries. Ladies and gentlemen, for the today's session of the podcast series brought to you by Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank, we invited the co-founder of the Food Bank Singapore, Nichol Ng, for this session. Nichol, it's a great honor to have you with us today. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me.
Okay, so to start the discussion, for the today's session, to start the discussion, I would like to start like this. You are one of the massive figures in the food banking services. So in accordance yourself, what does it mean by food banking services? I believe you should have a better explanation than what we know.
Yeah, I think for everyone to have an understanding, food banking basically is an industry term. It is not specific to any country or name or anything like that, but actually it's a type of service that, as long as a non-profit organization is in the role of redistributing what we call excess food or maybe food waste for some people, and give it a new lease of life by redirecting it to people in need. That is a simple, basic understanding of what food banking is all about. So this is number one. Secondly, most food banks around the world will have some kind of an inventory system. That means most of the larger food banks, they would have a warehouse or a location where the excess food from different donors would be stored and then redistributed again. And for simple understanding, most people will understand what a bank is, but we're familiar with the concept of money, right? So in the same way of like what a regular bank is, a food bank is simply a bank that stores food. So some people have actually asked us at the beginning stages of our founding in 2012, like, what do we need the most? We actually tell people a joke. I said, we're a food bank, so we actually need food. Because even if you give me money, I will use the money to buy food. So that's just to give you a simple understanding of what food banking is all about.
Okay, right. That's great. So, as the next question, I would like to move to this question. The Food Bank Singapore is one of the greatest food banks in the world. So, can you briefly explain some history related facts about Food Bank Singapore, and why did you think of starting this kind of initiative in Singapore?
Firstly, thank you for the compliment. I think on the global scale, Food Bank Singapore is not exactly the largest, neither is it the most established. But I think we have grown leaps and bounds over the last 9 years or so. So, firstly, just to share with you a little bit of the history, my own family has been doing food distribution business since 1930s in Singapore. So I'm a third generation business owner. But importantly, I also wanted to share I'm not some rich kid with lots of money or whatever. Our family has survived many crises, including World War One, World War Two. In 1980s, there was a oil crisis in Singapore. In 1997, there was an Asian currency crisis where our family went completely bankrupt at one stage. So I was someone who have experienced the ups and downs of having a food business or a food empire. So we also survived SARS as a business. So we are actually a very humble food distribution business. But I told myself, if there was ever an opportunity for us to regain or revive my grandfather's business that started in the 1930s, I was going to make sure that there was a way for us to give back to society in general. And so, therefore, I joined the business in 2002. This is my second job in order to modernize the family business. And so with that, I've been cleaning up the family business, and all that. But I also have a sincere interest in the food industry. And from there, in fact, over the last 18, 19 years or so, I've learned a lot about the food industry that made me feel that we are in a position to do a lot more for the people in need or for the people who are going hungry on a daily basis. Because Singapore is a free pot, and we import 90% of everything that we consume. But we actually throw away 30 over percent of all the imported products. So that's a lot of food waste that we're dealing with. And Singapore is quite interesting because we're a first world country, but there is no minimum wage, and either is there a poverty line. So we wanted to say, hey, how do we know whether people are starving or whether they are food insecure or not? And being in the food distribution business, it means that we're in the middle of the ecosystem. We work with large brands, but we also work with retailers, we also work with restaurants. So we decided in 2012 to set up Singapore's first food bank to address this particular issue, where can we use the food waste in Singapore or excess food and redistribute it to the people in need. So firstly, in case you didn't know, Singapore has about 10.4% of the population, which is about 500,000 people, that faces some kind of food insecurity on a very regular basis. And yet we're throwing away billions of tons of food on a given year, right? So what we are doing is to matchmake the two. So we started out in 2012 with a small initiative, just me and my brother, of thinking that we're going to matchmake the excess food to the people in need. Our humble opening tonnage for 2012 was 2 tons of food. We redistributed 2 tons of food. We benefited about 40 to 50 charity organizations. And now, 9 years on, last year, we actually redistributed 1.6 million kilograms of food to some 370 charity organizations that reaches out to about 300,000 people. So whether is it cooked food, or whether is it perishable items like fresh fruits and vegetables or dairy items, or also packaged items, that means like rice, biscuits, anything that is dry with an expiry date. So we actually have, I would say that we are one of the greatest food banks, if you call us such. We're only great because we are creative and we have been always introducing a lot of innovative ideas. So, for example, last year or the year before, we actually launched the vending machine program. Yeah, and it was very innovative because people would be able to get food aid 24/7 by tapping a card into the vending machines when most of the food aid is given out during office hours, for example. And but that was something that we did. That's just to show you some of the innovations that we've done. But overall, why we started this initiative was that we felt that food is a basic necessity of every single human being that lives on this earth, right? Which is why there's an SDG goal. But yet, why is it that for the earth to be overproducing more than enough food globally, why is it that there are still people, even like in a country like Singapore, that can go starving, on a regular basis? So this is something that we wanted to get rid of. Yeah.
Okay, wow, it's just absolutely an inspiring story. As one of the as the first initiative in Sri Lanka as the food bank, so it's really inspiring story for us. Thank you very much, Nichol. So as the next question, I would like to ask something like this. From the examples that you dragged out in the previous question, it's really we can understand that this is a sustainable solution. Food banking concept is a sustainable solution for the issue of food waste and hunger. So as the co-founder of this Food Bank Singapore, how do you see it as a sustainable solution in your perspective?
Yeah. So, so firstly, from a business standpoint of managing the organization, we decided to run it as an NGO, a non-profit, but we function like a business. So a lot of the ground up initiatives or a lot of the charities out there, they usually rely on handouts or fundraising activities in order for it to be sustainable, right, from a business point of view or operating point of view. But from the get-go, when we first started the food bank, we decided that business sustainability and viability was going to be important. So we started introducing programs that would help us to finance our operation. So for example, one of the initiatives that we have is the food bundle program. So every time you buy a food bundle for $15 that can be given out to someone, maybe we will keep about 10% of that money, right? So the 10% will help us to keep up with our overheads. But importantly, from a viability model of channeling excess food and giving it to those in need, I think the sustainable option or solution was also about convincing people to understand what you're doing, because I think most people around the world, they don't know what is excess food or what is still good to eat food. A lot of times when we first started out, and I believe that your food bank will be facing similar backlash as well, is that people say, hey, you're feeding people rubbish food, maybe you should give more respect to the people in need and blah, 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 and things like that. It's about changing people's mindset of what is excess food and food waste in the first place. Because food waste can mean something to you, it can mean something different to me. And if I'm sharing with you now the type of food waste that we have been salvaging, it's something like organic foods, for example, milk powder, which is very expensive. We even have full salmon fishes that one whole container load was donated to us before. We ever received container loads of French fries as well that was discarded by McDonald's because the fries wasn't long enough. And but people have to realize, that in general, food is discarded for a large range of reasons, and not just cosmetic reasons, but for business reasons, and sometimes suitability and all that as well. So I think from an advocacy point of view, our solution or food bankers, our solution is only sustainable for the long term if we share enough back-end knowledge and information about exactly what is food waste, number one. And secondly, it's also important to address what it means to be hungry or what it means to be food insecure. For every country, there will be a different demographic. There will be a different way of addressing these needs. And it's very important, if you want this solution to be a long-term sustainable solution, you need to continuously be working on the ground to actually find out from people as well, like, is the food that I'm giving you helping you to solve your problems, or are you just force feeding them certain products? So for example, if a family doesn't eat corn, but you're always giving them corn, then basically you're generating more food waste because you're not giving suitable solutions or food types to the families that may be in need as well. So I think in the long term, for food bankers all around the world, regardless which country you're in, you continuously need to recalibrate and replan your ideas all along. So I know that now you guys are in the founding stages, the early stages as well. It's very important to continuously be open to innovation and new ideas so that you're always at the forefront of making sure that your solution will always be sustainable towards your mission and your goal.
Okay, that's great. So you were talking about this innovative concepts, and you told that you were really creative when it comes to the operations. So I would like to know, when it comes to the composition of the people in any country, there are some laggards and there are some early adapters. There are different types of people. So how about the situation at the beginning? I would like to ask that question. At the beginning, did the Singapore people accept your service? So how was the situation at that period of time?
Okay. So for us, we were a latecomer, right? There were many other charities already doing a food program. It's just that it may not be regular, it may not be towards food waste. For example, most of them will ask people to go to a supermarket or a wet market or a street stall or whatever to buy food and then give it to people in need. There wasn't a specific charity that was targeting excess food and redistributing it to people in need. So when we first started out, especially with social media, even in the early days, like 2013, for example, a lot of people are actually questioning us, is the food safe? Why are you giving people rubbish food? And are you sure that some of the large donors in Singapore, the large brands, are saying, are you sure Singapore has hungry people? Are you sure there are people who are food insecure, etc.? So the first couple of years, the first 2 years or so, it was about firstly convincing donors that you should be donating your excess food and not about dumping them away. Secondly, it was also about winning over other NGOs' confidence that we are not here to steal your donors. Instead, we are giving you a more efficient solution so that you can better serve the people on the ground. Yeah, so we had to win trust on both sides. And I must say, it took us about 2 to 3 years to break the ice and to win the trust over. But with the way that we have grown, as you can see, we definitely have won them over already through the years. And importantly also is we have been working very closely with different media platforms. So now let's say the national agencies, right? The government agencies, the national media, the food bank in Singapore has become the go-to person for a resource for anything about food waste or anything about hunger situations or hunger issues in Singapore. It's because we have been very open about talking about different things. We will never shy away from certain topics. And because we have been very vocal about it, it has enabled us to open doors in many different ways and maybe move forward with our advocacy as well. And I think this is very important to be able to dare to speak up about certain things, especially about issues that you're deeply passionate about.
Okay, I would like to add something actually. As you told this, some people were asking that are there hungry people in Singapore? In our case, some people were asking that, are there surplus food items in Sri Lanka? So there are surplus food in Sri Lanka. So that was in our case. Okay, thank you very much. So we are going to the next question. As we observed about your network, many private and public organizations have partnered with your organization, with Food Bank Singapore. So in the perspective of those companies, how such engagements are important for those companies in your perspective?
Yeah, so I think for the corporates, some of them may not have a budget yet, like to give money or anything. So we started out with volunteer engagement. That means some of them, they want to volunteer their time, They want to make sure that the food bank is above board, especially in our early days when we are not a tried and tested charity organization, and they were not quite sure whether they wanted to support us or not. So in all our vision or mission activities, so to say, regardless how big the donor was, we start with baby steps and baby projects. So even if, let's say, a department of 8 people want to come and do a volunteering, we will start with that. We won't force them to give money or food or whatever else. So this is one. And then the second thing also is I wanted to address that as a charity, every year we will publish our audited reports. So it's so for everyone to see, our books are there. You can actually see how every dollar is being used. And if you have any questions that you may have on how we are spending certain money at different areas, we've also made it open for anybody to want a question so that it wins their confidence over. And I think over the last at least 4 or 5 years or so, we have, with this very open approach, we have won over a lot of trust from some of these large corporates. But it was very important that whether you're a new charity or a small charity or a big charity, trust is very important because these are the people that will continuously come back to you if you're able to win their trust. And importantly, there are two things. We take pride in food safety because we are dealing with food. So it is very, very important to ensure that the food that we distribute and that we benefit the end beneficiaries is something that's safe for consumption. We will never ever give out food that we ourselves will not be eating. So this is one. And secondly, especially for the food companies who are very open to give out food donations through us, it's because we also have an open book process where we are able to share with them that, hey, your 10 cartons of biscuits is going to this family, this charity as well. So they are able to trace back whenever they want in terms of the food donations. So we put it as a people first approach, whether is it people in terms of the donors or people in terms of the beneficiaries. We wanted to ensure that we are safeguarding their brands or their well-being first. And so through the years, because of the reputation that we've built up, we have made significant strides so that more large corporates came back to us frequently, number one. But secondly, we can also then be a representation for the food banks in Southeast Asia. And then we are redistributing or redirecting some donors that have offices in different parts of the world to also then support the food banks in our fellow regions as well.
Okay, right, great. So in the background check for this interview, I got to know that you have built up a great youth volunteer network around the Food Bank Singapore. So in that case, how do you retain the youth contribution around this service? I mean, the volunteer network they are not paid. So sometimes some of the people may not like this concept as they are not paid, as they also considering about some kind of profit or something. So how did you retain the youth for this volunteer network in your organization?
So, I think it's important to note that our full-time team, the 10 of them, most of them are below 30 years old, and they usually join us as a first job after fresh out of school. And they are with us simply out of a passion and the love for the mission. So that was one thing. So we only hire people that resonates with our mission. Of course, these are fully paid employees. But to answer your question about the youth volunteering, it's interesting to know that actually for us, youth also starts from 5 years old. So we start them very, very young. In fact, we are the only, I think, one of the food banks in the world that has what we call a juniors food bankers club. So we accept any volunteers from 5 years old onwards to help to sort out food in the warehouse or become an ambassador in the school, or if they want to do a certain special food waste talk, in the school or share with their classmates. So we actually start them very young. And as you know, like with everything, if you start people young, they have a tendency to remember your mission and to remember what your organization really is all about. And it's very heartening to know that actually a lot of the youth today, they have a sense of responsibility in that way where they actually want to give back, right? So whether, they need some money or not, but I think a lot of the younger people of today, like yourselves and many of your listeners, have a sincere passion that the world is dying for whatever it is, right? They want to make sure that the world gets past this difficult 10 years, in time to come. They want to be able to contribute back to society and things like that. So I think it's very important to make sure that your mission and the actions that you're doing resonates with the youth. But I have to say as well that you have to make it interesting. That means you cannot make the volunteering boring all the time. So I understand that, let's say your food bank, you're maybe salvaging some fruits or food or whatever else. So maybe instead of just the fresh food distribution, why not, maybe they can do set up a juicing counter or something and sell fresh juices or something. But what I'm just saying is that allow them to think out of the box on how they can also participate in this action. And then maybe the food bank can get some ideas out of it as well. And I think one very important thing is that the youth will come and go. It's important to have different pockets of youth so that you can always rotate around with different schools, different young people. And so therefore, from food banking's perspective, you will also be able to extract the best ideas on the next steps that you want to take. Yeah.
Okay, right, great. Okay, we are reaching to the end of the interview. By the next question will be the final question that is to be asked. So my question is, how do you define the significance of volunteering to youth in terms of food banking perspective? I mean, the benefit towards the youth. What is the benefit for the youth by volunteering in a concept like food banking services?
Yeah, I think if you wanted to engage the youth a lot more, so these are a couple of things that I shared with them. So I think firstly, statistics is important. If you have some numbers, especially to shock them, not just about the numbers in Sri Lanka, but maybe on a global basis as well. So some people often feel that, the problem is only isolated in a country, for example, like, or it's no business to me, right? It's like, okay, I'm just very comfortable in my space right now. But if you share with them certain global statistics, for example, that if you participate in food banking, let's say in Sri Lanka, for example, the food banking movement, you are also playing a part towards a global movement of bettering the lives of people all around the world. Because as food bankers, we come together like today, and I've spoken with the founders of your food bank as well. And it's because of cross sharing, right? And it also gives them a sense of assurance and a sense of purpose as well that, yes, we're not crazy, we definitely want to do this and that we can be successful as well. I think for a lot of the youth, sometimes they feel a little bit lost. And if you can give them some sense of purpose in why I should participate in food banking. So for example, you can ask them a question like, have you ever gone hungry, or have your family ever struggled at some point in your life? So one thing that I also ask many local Singaporeans as well, especially for those who are in the lower income families, is if you have the ability to make a change to your own family, wouldn't you want to play a part in that? So I think it's about changing the world with small steps, but also letting them realize that they are part of a much larger movement, and it's a global movement. It's not just a Sri Lanka movement that will create a much bigger magnitude to what they see food banking to be all about.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicole. We have come to the end of the third episode of the Ask from the Experts podcast series by Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank. So the today's topic was food banking services and its importance towards zero hunger. Ladies and gentlemen, the most important resource person for the today's session was the co-founder of the Food Bank Singapore, Nichol Ng. Nicole, thank you very much for participating in the third episode of the Food for All Kadamandiya podcast series, Ask from the Experts. It's really a great honor for us to have you with us today. Thank you very much for the participation. Thank you very much for your valuable thoughts. Actually, we are really impressed with your thoughts about the origination of the Food Bank Singapore. It's really great. Ladies and gentlemen, until we meet with the fourth episode of the Ask from the Expert podcast series by Food for All Kadamandiya Food Bank, stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you.